terrible handwriting. Um, so with a small group, what I thought I would actually like to do is just kind of have people introduce yourself, but instead of just where you work and what you do, I would like to know kind of what your ideal career breakdown would be. Meaning, if you had a perfect world, how much time would you do clinical, how much time would you do research, and how much time would you want to be in the US versus doing this abroad? Okay? Oni, we'll start with you.
Oh, so my wish list. I think it's going to evolve it depends on life, right? Life circumstances. So right now I have 2 young sons, and a husband in training here. So I think for me, 50-50 would make sense in terms of being here in the country, and not 50-50, 25-75. So realistically, I think maybe I can take my son's summers to be in country, and then 75% here domestically. And how much would be clinical versus research? Probably a feasible way to do it would be to spend 3 days a week with patients, and then 2 days a week doing research. But if I was, the 25% of the time I'm in the other country, I'd probably be more so focused very heavily on clinic. So, but later on in life, I think probably, I don't know what age, I'm probably just gonna get up and talk myself in 100% in another country. So it's gonna evolve.
And then in that 100% another country, would it be all research, or would you be doing clinical and research?
I think it would probably be primarily clinical work, probably again 80-20 split.
Okay.
More so clinical.
Hi, I'm Natalie. I think I'm a little bit of an anomaly here. I'm 100% researcher. I'm son at the age. I think for me the more challenge is that getting out to spend time in the field. I spent 4 years working in Nicaragua and Rwanda before I came and worked at NIH. And the process of kind of going abroad for a week or 2 weeks in world and trips still like doesn't make sense to me. So building it, I don't know what you guys do in your country, but more time.
Okay.
I'm Kika. So yeah, I'm in a position now where I've interviewed a couple jobs, so I get asked this question a lot. And I don't know what the right answer is.
It's not a right answer. It's
Right,
what's,
no, I totally agree.
what is your answer?
I think if there are no limitations, I would probably want to spend probably 70% of my time, I think, in the country and maybe 30% out of the country. And then that 70% in country, I would want to do, I mean, I think it means different things to different people, but 60% clinical and 40% research. And then the time out of the country, that 30% of the time out of the country, I would probably want to do more research than clinical. And research meaning building infrastructure, developing capacity, setting it up for a research program, and then also helping out.
Okay. Sam?
So I'm doing now, I'm faculty at Monday. And one of the things that I've learned in as well is that these divisions mean different things to different people. So on my job, contract is a 50-50 split right now. So I was hired on as an investigator. But our volumes are very high compared to the other year, and if you're prepared, you can come up with that split. It's also testing, and evolve over time.
Would you want to stay in the U.S. for all your research, or do some abroad and some U.S.?
Yeah, so Canada, so yes, North America.
North America.
For the research time, what would be important to me is developing collaborations. It's like a meaningful collaboration with another center. That time can be really well used in your way. So I'm still in the process of building that up, but I can imagine over time, maybe it's 19 times a day, also for different life seasons.
Okay. Really bad internet. Yes?
What I would say for all of you, fund your IRA. And make sure your retirement
Sound like my husband.
is sufficient so that when it comes time, you don't have to get paid.
So what would you do if you never had to worry about, what would your ideal be after?
I'm doing it right now.
Mhm.
Volunteering at Cornell, I work with amazing people who are asked to work with me. I teach. And then I have other interests outside of this. I have just psychology and stuff, and the Blue Foundation in New York. And I'm interested in Greek history, and I'm going to an archaeological site for Homer's Odysseus. That's why.
Well, but I see some board member, I'm in healthcare management and that's all, so I'm into that. So it's an interesting movie for all. That way, as I say, to do the defense pension, you want to do when you're not generating revenue, it's early savings. Then I found mine on some interesting boards involved in things like this.
Can I go back? Does anybody here have an IRA or retirement?
I do now.
I can't believe the people that are 30 and younger that are going through medicine. You guys absolutely have to have it. You have to be ready to stay. Fund it as much as you can, save it. Because it gives you freedom later on to do things that you can't possibly imagine. So that's my advice to everybody.
You've been talking to my husband, yep. Good.
I'm part of the thing. I'm making sure so probably 30% of the
Mhm.
while probably focus on quality improvement and research.
Okay. So that's about that one. Okay.
I also think everything you said, the point of your career makes it a bit different. I think for me, I would probably just say, 80-20 research, 80%, 20% clinical, because that 20% seems to be pretty low, 30%, 40%. And so it seems like it might be nice to kind of, have a minimum idea, and then it seems like it often takes up, much longer time as dedication. And I think that in terms of time abroad, I think early career, I think abroad will be half of the research time, and then clinical would be in the US, and then most of the
Okay. Around there.
I'm not sure I'm the best person to ask. I'm at the end of my career, but and just retired. And my entire career was a series of stumbling into opportunities that were not pre-planned, but in retrospect, everyone was a great choice, and so I'm very happy with what I did. But the one lesson I learned early in my career is if you wind up spending too much time in the clinic, and it will, in essence, especially in oncology, crowd out almost any other activity. As it grows, and
works now in these healthcare systems. So that keeps changing, and I'm only going to see the economics of things later. So the ability to do things that don't affect my clinical is going to get harder. So it's that's the reality of this.
That's going to be my question at the end of all this, but go ahead.
So just keep that in mind, it's today is going to change, and it's going to become hard to do.
So I'm close to the end of my career, not quite there, but almost. So, and also my kids are around, so I think the mic I need a little. But recalling at the beginning of my career, I did remember wanting to have most of our job descriptions that are now prescribed as kind of 50-50 if you're a clinician investigator or if you're a clinician scientist, is it 20% is clinical and all the rest is research. But those are rare positions that you have to have postdoc and you have to have X number of grants bringing in to keep that position. Whereas for a clinical investigator, you need the clinical volume in order to sustain your question building. So I remember at the beginning of my career, I felt that having the 50% was needed to keep me, to build my competency and my excellence in clinical and be able to ask questions and collect the data. So I think that the 50% is a good compromise. But as I get older, there's more administrative work, so now sort of clinical part is more like 40%. In terms of in country versus out, we don't really currently have a system where we are deploying people to another country. The approach that we're taking is to have house learning, if you will, and send a team to facilitate the mission. So there I'm thinking the model that we envisaging people working in Europe in China and build in the relationships and be able to build enough relationships and leave them alone to grow their learning and then come back and then continue with it in a few months, a year would be a good compromise.
Okay.
Holly, I'm a OBGYN resident. Ideally, later on in my career, I'd like to be 100% individual. Split between clinical and research. And then I'd like to be labeled medical education as well, so I don't know if that gets its own percent or if that just kind of overlays everything.
Part of research-ish. 50-50. And we're going to do 50%. Okay.
Hi, Jill, from the so that makes it 80% clinical work and the rest, Sunday.
On Sunday, you get to do research.
How it works with research, they need as well. And, 100%. I don't know if it makes it easy, but once you go out with that, you get less work, clinical work in research / So I hope the next few years is
Okay.
but the reality is it's very much more
Okay. And the reason why I kind of go through this is it sounds like a majority of people would love to be able to be at their home institution 3/4 of the time, perhaps being at another institution 1/4 of the time, and then the amount of research is anywhere from all to 20%, so somewhere in that range. So the thing that's important for us to understand is how does that get divided, and how then do we advance in our career, and what are the markers for what's considered in advancing kind of feedback from, we talked before about papers, we've talked about teaching, mentoring. So with the idea of funding, which is getting more difficult, when you are in country, you are doing RVUs. You're able to see patients and generate that. So anything that you are doing either out of country or are doing as part of research has to have funding in order to do that. So I think we can talk about different options or different things that people have found as funding mechanisms. And then I'm also interested from our senior members here, how you would be able to judge what is successes for your students, for your junior faculty who are interested in doing this global type of research.
Yeah, so I'll just add on that, and I think this is a great exercise because my job is to figure out how to do it, right? So what I would challenge you to think about, as a group right now, we can go on the next page, you're coming into my office. You're making a pitch. How are you going to do it? What are you going to say? What are the things you think you're going to bring to the table in regards to what you're bringing, how you're going to do funding? What kind of things have you thought through walking in the door? How are we going to do that 50 to 100% research? How are we going to do 25 to 50% in country, and why? As a department chair is going to be looking at all kinds of resources and all kinds of people, all kinds of lines every day coming through the door. What is going to differentiate you? What is it that you're going to come with? And what are some things you want to write down? Because you have to think about this. Chika, you're on the road right now interviewing. These are the kind of things that in reality, if that's what your career wants to be, what kinds of things do you want to think about that you're going to bring up when you go in the door?
Grant funding. There already is established grant funding that support this type of work. So that means you have to have done legwork prior to getting to this point, and be able to like name some, either NCI funded grant, grant funding mechanisms that might be able to support some of the research outside of the department.
Yeah, so absolutely, coming in with some form of funding, and part of the way you do that, it may be even small grants that you're able to get to show that you have the initiative, that you want to get these things and bring them along. And a lot of times, as looking at somebody coming to me, I'll match those grants, or I'll do some things to say, you do X, I'll max it times whatever. So I think coming in with some kind of funding in the door is really important. It'll get you a lot further than not coming with that at all. So doing your homework, absolutely beforehand, of what those things are. What else do you want to do?
I've been thinking a lot about mission. My mission, I want to match the mission and the department and the institution, so doing some homework in terms of that component, and also whether or not there's an existing global cancer program or there's a friendliness towards kind of that kind of messaging.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at your institution and seeing what is there a global cancer center, or not cancer, just a global program already across the university is really important, because sometimes they have funding and you can tap into those, and that's usually easier to get than some of the funding trying to go right to government funding or other things, a lot of times institutionally. So yeah, that's absolutely right. And the other piece you said there that's really important is understanding what is the strategic plan of that organization, so you can shape your message of how it fits that. Because a lot of times if it doesn't fit the strategy of where you're going, you're just talking on deaf ears. But if you can relate it to what are they trying to do as an organization, whether that's the department level or the institutional level, real important. So doing some homework and looking at what that strategic plan is and relating your story to that. So that's a great thing.
One of the things I would think about, or I did think about as well when I went to the when I thought my academic goals are within global health, the same way you develop an academic plan in any other area of research for a lab scientist or a clinical biologist, coming up with a vision for where you see your academic career progressing over a 5 and 10 year period, and how you can meet certain to date university accepted milestones for promotion in the university system. I think it'd be great to brainstorm around how we can change some of those promotions, but in the meantime, we do have to work within the existing system, pushing through the applications.
Yep, absolutely. And thinking about, and I like what you said there about milestones, because when you go into office and say, these are the metrics I'm going to put in place to hold myself to, that's another way that somebody's really going to believe in you and thinking about that coming in the door. And we were talking about the session just before this, some of you were there, some weren't. Going into global health, there are different issues with promotion you need to think through, but there are also tremendous opportunities. So you're instantly on an international scale, right? A lot of promotion looks at regional expertise, national expertise. You're already at an international scale where you're doing this. You're making connections internationally, and how you drive that into your promotion plans is really important. How you write your story, your personal story, is really important, that it's very well thought out, because it will be a little different from somebody else. And strategizing of how you're going to get those papers by working with residents, working with medical students, working with whoever, maybe remotely back home, because you're getting really unique data wherever you are, really unique experiences that I said earlier, you're not going to be held to, you have to do a phase 3 randomized trial in X. But hey, I instituted this process in a low-income country. That's a big deal. And being able to recognize how to do that through your promotion process is really important if you're in the academic setting. So, yeah.
Do you have a pathway for promotion for global oncology at Penn? That's been agreed upon. And the reason I ask that is that we're working on that program, we don't have it yet.
So I would say no, but what we do have, we have a dean for global health at Penn, who's very close to the dean of medicine, who's very supportive of these processes. So we've been able to say, although it may not be exactly the same look, I can't say that we have exact parameters yet, Harmer. But there's certainly an appetite, though, as people are going through promotion at Penn, to look a little differently at those applications than somebody who hasn't gone through that.
Just to follow up, one of the things that might be beneficial for ICEC is if you can find these pathways for promotion that you developed at Penn or one elsewhere, to make them available.
Yeah, very true.
So that there could be some common ground as people look to develop careers like this.
And I think you're right, because Cornell, Penn, we're probably in the same boat right now. And it isn't all defined yet. And if ICEC took a position that, hey, these are the types of things that you would want to see in a promotion path, I bet you a lot of it would be adopted by places.
So I would love to do that even now as we're talking, we are talking about things that we can put in our plan, but then I think on the reverse side, what are the specific metrics that might be unique for us in our careers? We're doing international or oncology in various realms. What sort of metrics would we be able to put in there? Which ones should we recommend as a group? That would be a measure for our success.
So just to go back to a question for you, funds flow is such a big issue, and every
Sure.
university has different funds flow, and oftentimes they don't really they stay in departments or divisions. So medical oncology is the least common.
Peds oncology.
Institution makes money, but so they're always resource support to support things like that. Radiation at the moment is changing, there's more resources. So how do you, usually isn't funds flow that necessarily goes to global health, goes all information. So what's I think one thing to think about is your organization, just the organization you're looking at, is the funds flow that we challenge. And usually medical oncology, depending on that, is hard.
Yeah, so I'm in radiation oncology, but really I put together, for instance, the same package for all of my people in general that are coming in on an academic path. And there are some differences, I shouldn't say same, similar. If people are going into wet bench only, that's a little bit different package than somebody who's going to be clinical and doing research. But how we manipulate that in some ways and how we put the metrics in place can be a little bit different. For instance, we've invested in things in a little different way to get, so Sturby's in country, how do we invest in a place for her to live? How do we do some things for changing some other aspects of her reimbursement and stuff that equalize the other way but help her do global health? So there's some unique things that we kind of think about. The funds flow is a whole different complicated issue, right, across an institution. And it's hard, I will tell you, it's very hard to put this in a funds flow process. We tried to do that for what we were doing global health, and it just didn't even fly at Penn. So we are using our own funding to do that, or looking for funding through the dean's office or other stuff. But funds flow hasn't really supported this kind of thing, because funds flow is really part of the clinical mission-driven funds throughout the health system and broaden that across, but it's really hard to justify this, at least at our institution, through a funds flow mechanism.
So some departments have more discretionary funds.
So the way it works at Penn, we actually equalize it across departments. There's a shift through the funds flow. So we all get certain clinical dollars. We all get the same it's a formulaic. So it's formulaic for education and medical students coming through. It's formulaic for the number of residents. It's formulaic for a number of things. And then we decide what we do with it. So internally, so I make judgments on how we're going to use those funds, and some will go towards global health issues, some won't at all. Depends on the priorities. But this is why, what is your ask? How are you coming in with your plan? What's going to intrigue me as a chair to say, I'm going to do this? And that's why that's so important.
So let's make this a white paper. What things would we say we would want to present to, as we're being hired, these are the metrics that, as a community, we should be judged by for our successes? And what things are generic to everyone, publication, grant number, lectures you've given, mentees you've had, and what can we put in the literature that is unique for global oncology, whether radiation or medical or peds or anything else?
Creative professional activity with chemistry promotion.
Can you say that again?
Creative professional activity.
What does that mean? Like,
So in Canada, we can get promoted as an educator, as a researcher, and that's essentially based on research science publication and how internationally effective you are. And then creative professional activity is how most people like me, most of our departments promoted. And that is all about the concept of impact. So you do your publications, you do your guidelines, you go and implement something, and you write a story about what you have implemented. And our promotion process is not just global health or medicine. It's a panel of basic scientists, everybody. So we don't have separate things for different departments, but you get promoted on one of these things. So if the creative professional activity concept is not used, it's quite flexible. And I think the global health impact fits very nicely to how this and as well.
So I agree with you completely. And I'll give you, so what happened with me, when I was a resident, this was 1995, I had an interest, and I went to my chair, could I get involved with this thing that's coming along that nobody was doing yet? It was this thing in 1995 called the internet. Okay? There was no career based on the internet. There was no promotion based on the internet. And I ended up doing Oncolink and running Oncolink for years and getting all kinds of educational things, everything outside the norm. But I was able to get promoted all the way through the process, no problem, because I defined through my personal statement what I was doing and the things I was doing unique and the things I was building. You can do the same thing with global health. You know, and we know in academics, things are going to continuously evolve. New technologies are going to come along. New ways of doing things are going along. You're at the forefront of it. Define it. That's part of this. Define it. If you can define it, you can explain it through a personal statement. Academic settings are going to take it, like Princess Margaret or Penn or other places. It's the same thing with global health from my perspective.
other ideas of metrics or things that would be unique? I like that, the idea of the impact narrative, and then including that.
I think the biggest thing we're going for is life saved. And so if there was a metric that you could actually put for life saved, there was a study that you guys all published about the ramp up that needed to happen up to 2025, and it was going to save, X and X millions of lives. If there was a way to actually measure that, like say, okay, based on this outreach effort or this program or this whatever, this is how many lives were just saved. Then that's
An outcome measure.
that's showing the ultimate goal of what we want to be out of all this is life saved.
And with that, as you're going, thinking globally, right, you're going and say, how am I developing a standard here that something can be applied, with the resources in that setting, which may be very different from what they are here. But just being able to show that you've instituted a standard and you're collecting stuff, that's huge. To be able to, because all the politics you need to go through, all the other things you need to go through, all the education, that's all defined by what you're doing. So you can make that story just by doing that.
With that, when you bring up the metrics, one of the metrics that is now used a lot, including the ethical oncology, is rate of diagnosis
Yeah.
And that would be a way to measure kind of your research impact as you're doing it. And also, if it's not necessarily research, your infrastructure development impact, your capacity development impact. And maybe outside of the typical realm of what we think of as outcomes.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring up reverse innovations, or sort of bringing back technologies or ideas and global health work to the department at home. I think that could be a really strong selling point. The Android, sort of application that we're working on is Oncology sort of workflow manager. We talked to the MGH Home Innovations Lab about it, just to sort of get their feedback in terms of what we can do better, how we can think it through, wanting to do this in a global, low resource setting. And the feedback that we got was, would you like to develop this for Boston? Like, we would love to have this at MGH. And ultimately, we were like, well, not now, because I think that, the specifications are slightly different. It was going to take us down another pathway, but I think that, being able to pursue those dual pathways of innovations that, could be helpful in slightly different formulations in two settings to really add value, back to your department in ways that are measurable.
And that would go in that
So,
sort of, I think, the
I would
impact
say,
narrative.
absolutely, bingo. So there are lots of things that we are learning in the developing world. Remember, think about, I use the phone analogy, right? They're not going to landlines, then to the cell phone, to the smartphone. They're jumping right to the smartphone, right? To solve problems and to do things, because the technology's there. But thinking about those technology to be implemented, how you bring it back home. And then I can tell you, we've done things where we've developed stuff. We've said, you know what, this is just as important where we are. We're implementing this. And then there's ways to develop that, license it, and actually get a revenue that goes back into your global health program. And we've done this. And there are opportunities to do that. So keep your eyes open thinking about those things. Some of them are along educational initiatives. Some of them are along standardization initiatives. These are all important things that we do in the developed world too. And you can learn a lot by working with your partners and finding ways to get unique revenue streams back into your global health program to support you with the time you want to have in being there. And if somebody came to me, in proposing a job, that this is what I want to do and this is the way they're thinking, I'd be all over it.
Yeah, so another metric, so the phone group I like to participate in is the sort of research network. Basically, every year we go into these different countries or different continents, and we fly in doctors from all the countries. So this last year we fell on Africa, and in Africa, one thing that they brought up was they wanted us to have a metric of quality of life impact and how to actually study quality of life, and that more than just providing them with training care or whatever else. They said, if you're going to die of cancer, let's figure out how we can have people die with dignity, and how can we change quality of life as making an impact on that.
Actually, another one, I want to echo another thing, Brandon. The other thing, I think you're a prime example of this. You guys went and started Raise a Hope. And philanthropy can be very important with this. I can tell you all the chairs across the country have philanthropy targets that they have to hit every year. If you're bringing a new idea for philanthropy into the department, which you've done, there's a great opportunity for that to support programs. So you had a very unique thing with climbing and things like that, but there's other ideas out there, and patients who are grateful for what you've done and how you've helped them are looking for things like this to get involved with if they feel it's tangible and real, that you're really helping people, and you are. So develop that story a little bit too.
Three things I've been thinking about. One, quality improvement. I think that goes with the abandonment one. I've been thinking a lot about how domestic clinicians who are working on QI, how they get promoted, like what's that process like for them? And one of the things that we've been exploring with regard to QI in, for example, Ocean Road is how to decrease the percentage of people who don't finish radiation and radiation. That's, I think, kind of the low-hanging fruit type of thing. Figure out what kind of fractionation makes most sense, if any. And then the second one is from like an operational and economics standpoint. Are there interventions that are simple that you can execute that could improve the operational efficiency
that to be some kind of metric that can be used. And then the third will come to me in a little bit.
So just to summarize, it sounds like all of us are kind of interested in embarking on a non-traditional career path, right? Based on what has been said. So that means the metrics that people have to judge the work that we've done to show our success cannot be the same as what it has been in the past. I think this is a great start for options and things that we can think of. And I think what makes sense is going in with a plan, going in with, this is what I want to do, this is how I plan to support what I want to do, and this is how I'm going to show you that I am successful. I think that's really important. That'll be based on traditional things, publications, grants you're planning on applying for, lectures that you give, but then I think these non-traditional things that we're talking about as metrics of success rather than metrics of success outcomes for a research project, you're using it as a metric of a success of your work, I think is an important thing for us to think about. And the philanthropy, I think, is a cool idea to put in as a metric that you can use for promotion. I am doing this, I have impacted this many people. The creative, what do we call it? The creative narrative. The creative narrative, the creative personal statement, I think is a really neat idea that I haven't heard of other than just talking about what you've done, but I like it in that format, which I think is a great way and a great thing to do within global oncology.
A recommendation, there's a paper that was just published in Lancet in November called Academic Promotion Policies and Equity of Global Health. And it has a list of recommendations for not just ways that we can sort of rethink the academic promotion policies to support an individual, but how to best support a collaboration. So to kind of promote equity and global health collaboration, how can we change the way the promotion pathway to better serve those collaborations? So if anyone is interested or wants to use those recommendations to bring to your leadership, I have the paper here I can show you, or just search for it. It's November 2018.
Excellent.
It's like a comment.
Excellent. And this list you guys just came up with, this is a paper in itself. You know, right here, how to approach a career and, you know, and get it funded and stuff.
I just have one last thing. I agree with you completely that while we have so many different priorities and a small pot of money that a chair is given, I rely a lot on philanthropy. So
Yeah.
the endowment that I have in Georgetown came from a grateful patient.
Yep.
The money that I send the residents out on or faculty out on all of them. So I work very closely with the fundraising.
And that's the great thing about that is